In today's show, the Blazers waive Didi Louzada and open up a roster spot. Is this flexibility to improve the roster down the line? Or is this just simple economics to deduct the luxury tax? Welcome to Locked On Blazers. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Trailblazers, your daily Portland Trailblazers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What up, world? It's your past first point guard and Trailblazer reporter, Mike Richmond. You're listening to another episode of Locked On Blazers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, available wherever you get podcasts and also on YouTube. Thanks for making this show your first listen every day that it drops. We're still 3 days a week rolling along here in August, but as we get closer to training camp, we back up to 5 days a week, your only daily Trailblazers podcast. Make it a part of your daily routine and make it your first listen. In today's show, we are talking Didi Louzada, gone. Not yet forgotten. The Blazers now with just 14 players on the roster. We'll talk about the implications of waiving Didi Louzada, the machinations of waiving Didi Louzada, and what's next for the Blazers. We'll also talk about training camp invites. A couple players the Blazers have invited training camp that will be competing for not that open roster spot, but a second two-way spot. We haven't talked about them yet. It's time to jump up to learn who's going to be in camp when things open up in about a month here. Let's talk Didi Louzada. Earlier this week, the Blazers officially waived, August 29th, they officially waived, on Tuesday, officially waived Didi Louzada, sending home the wing after 7 games with the Blazers, 122 glorious minutes, 35 points on 12 shots. 9 of them were three-pointers. Didn't make a lot of two-pointers in his time. Didi Louzada had 2 years remaining on his contract after this one. 3 full guaranteed years waived by the Blazers. The Blazers elected to, according to Michael Scotto of Hoops Hype, after waiving Didi Louzada, stretch his contract, which means they will have a cap hit over the next 7 seasons. There was, deadline spur actions. If they had waited past August 31st, they would have been able to waive Didi Louzada, but his money would have counted whole hog against the salary cap. He was owed about, just shy of $2 million, 1.9 million bucks. This way, they're able to reduce the cap hit that waiving Didi Louzada's contract counts against their salary cap in the future. And you may say, I don't care about their salary cap. I don't care about the numbers. Why would they do this? Well, let's get into the sort of why would they do this. The number one motivation for doing this is getting them below the salary, the luxury tax line. The Blazers were about $1.5 million into the luxury tax. If you're into luxury tax, you pay a tax on every dollar that you are over the tax, and if you have a certain threshold, more than $1, et cetera, et cetera. In addition, if you are a tax team for 3 out of 4 seasons, there is a stiffer penalty, a repeater tax, and you pay even more money. So not starting the clock on being a tax team has some value, and the Blazers chose to do so. Instead of $1.88 million against the cap, Didi Louzada's cap hit now it was only about $268,000 against the cap over the next 7 seasons. That's a long time, to be sure, but it is less. If they were going to go this route, I think it in some ways makes more sense to go about it now. We'll talk about why now versus later, but let's sort of talk about what this sets them up to do. This sets them up to have to not, first of all, not be in the luxury tax. 2, it sets them up to just have this roster spot open. Now, they've gone into seasons in the past without this roster spot open, right? They've done this in the past. But mostly is by not signing a 15th guy. This is a different case. This is specifically going from 15 down to 14. This is flexibility, the F word. Like this is financial is what it is the actual F word. They're saving luxury tax. But I think this is a different version of that because it is actually allowing them to make decisions in the future that doing this, that holding on to Didi and saying, let's get under the tax later would not have allowed them. More on that in a moment. The other thing you are thinking of is that it's too much dead money on the cap. And I just don't agree with that right now. in the past, the Blazers have done some stupid things with this stretch and waive provision. They signed Allen Crabbe they matched Allen Crabbe's $75 million contract. Then a year later, they said, I don't think we should be paying Allen Crabbe all this money. They traded him to the Brooklyn Nets in exchange for Andrew Nicholson, and they waived Andrew Nicholson using this stretch provision, stretch and waive Andrew Nicholson. It 7 years of about $3 million of dead money. That is a problem. $260,000 is not the same problem. It's not the same problem. The cap's going to jump up in 2 seasons, almost assuredly like 10%, if not more. But it could increase 6% incrementally every season. $260,000 is already not very much against a $132 million salary cap. If the salary cap jumps up to like 150 some, it's not going to be a significant hit. I think this is fine. But if you say, man, heading into training camp, and what they do is they waive somebody, how am I supposed to get excited? Well, I want to offer you 2 different reads on this. One, maybe a reason to give the Blazers a little grace here and a reason to be excited. And then I'll tell you what I really think. We'll do that in the second segment. First, let me tell you about BetOnline. It's the fastest and easiest way to bet on all your sports action. More lines, more props, more odds than anywhere else. BetOnline's doing it. If you're looking to get action on sports, they're doing it. Got the WNBA playoffs still rolling along. You got the end of the MLB season. You've got futures bets on the NBA, futures bets on NHL. You've got tennis with the US Open. You've got golf tournaments. You've got combat sports. Whatever it is, you're going to find action there on betonline.net. So don't wait. Go take advantage today. That's BetOnline, where the game starts. Still a pass first point guard. Still Mike Richmond, and you are still listening to Locked on Blazers. So I talked about, I want to give you 2 reads on the Didi Louzada thing. We talked about sort of the why they would do this. I want to get into the 2 reads of why. The first read is one we've already touched on, but I want to expand on here. It's flexibility, and the Blazers have typically taken 14 in the last few years into the regular season, and the previous GM Neil Olshey would always talk about he prefers the flexibility. And that's nonsense. Those are lies. What he preferred was not going into the luxury tax because his boss, the people who own the team, didn't want to go into luxury tax. I don't know if he can say that publicly, but it was certainly obvious, and he wasn't particularly good at bending, twisting the narrative in a public setting. It was one of his weaknesses. But this move does give the Blazers a little more flexibility. This I'm willing to be more generous in this, or I'll give you my read on how to be more generous with this. If the goal was to get under the luxury tax line, in my opinion, in my view, it is better to do it now in August and go into the regular season with 14 players than to go into the deadline with 15 guys on the roster, a team that's like, 6th, 7th in the West, and everybody else knows that you are desperate to shed $1.5 million and they are holding you over the barrel. You lose all of your leverage. Didi Louzada has had 3 seasons, or this season and 2 more after it, fully guaranteed on his contract. Good for Didi. Get the bag, kid. Good for Didi's agent. Get the bag. Heck of a contract handed out there by David Griffin in New Orleans. And to be clear, Didi Louzada was just like not an NBA player. I'm happy that he's getting the money. I'm always rooting for labor here, but like the Blazers aren't going to miss him. He was very clearly not an NBA player. And the Blazers don't necessarily have need for another developmental part in the roster. They've got some much more enticing developmental pieces on the roster. So waiving Didi now, waiving this development part you don't need now, gets you below the tax line. No one can when you are trying to negotiate with trades, no one can say, that's our final offer. We know you need to get under. Call us back when you're ready to take it. You don't lose that negotiation leverage immediately. In addition, even if you don't lose the negotiation leverage, no one's taken Didi Louzada for free. In the past, the Blazers were able to salary dump someone like Noah Vonleh in order to get under the tax, right? They were like, here, we're going in the season. We don't want to be a tax team. We got Noah Vonleh. If we get rid of his money, we can get out from under it. Noah Vonleh was an expiring contract. You can just, much, much easier to trade because a team will take a flyer on a guy from February until April. And if he works out, you either have his bird rights or restricted free agency or however it would be. With Didi, it's like a long-term commitment. It's another 2 seasons after that February to April rental for another team. Like, and it wasn't like Louzada was going to play a bunch and like look like an enticing piece. He was literally just going to be an obvious salary dump type of trade for a team that was going to be an obvious salary dump type of team. The Blazers were going to lose their leverage if they held on to him. I really do think that this is a fine way to go if that was your goal. And why would it be your goal? Because paying the luxury tax for a team that's not like sniffing an NBA Finals appearance is probably a responsible way to run a really expensive team. Me personally, like sitting in this chair, like it's easy to say this from my basement into my microphone, like billionaires have a ton of money, they should pay the tax, like all hell, right? Like it's just like they should just run up the tax bill and pay whatever and who cares because it's like more money than you could ever spend, right? That's my opinion. But like I can see the sort of economic responsibility. You don't start, as I mentioned, the repeater tax in the first segment, you don't start the clock on the repeater tax. If you're not going to be a really good team, there's no reason necessarily from like ownership standpoint to be a tax team. And with long-term money committed to Anthony Simons, long-term money committed to Yusuf Nurkic, a massive contract extension signed by Damian Lillard, a likely large contract extension coming for Jeremy Grant, potentially large contract extension coming for Nasir Little, or at least multi-year money coming for Nasir Little. This looks like a team that's going to pay the tax in the future or bump up against it in the future. And if you think that they're going to, you think that the young guys are going to pop, Jabari Walker and Shaedon Sharp's going to, it's all going to work out and they're going to get good. You plan on being a tax team when you're good. So not starting the clock is like totally reasonable and like fiscally responsible. Again, personally, I do not think NBA teams should be fiscally responsible. But again, my opinion, not my money, pocketbook peeping. It's not necessary, right? That's the most generous read. It's responsible to do it now. It protects an asset because you're going to have to attach like a second round pick to get to Didi Louzada, and it keeps your leverage because you weren't going to be able to negotiate, valuable trades if every team in the league knew that you, the 7th best team in the Western Conference, desperately wants to get out from under. I'm projecting the Blazers at the trade deadline. Desperately wants to get out of the tax. That's like if you're trying to trade and upgrade the roster, still that leverage exists. If you're a tax team desperate to get out of it, you're trying to trade Josh Hart, and they're like, cool, yeah, final offer. We know what you need. We know your motivations. Now the Blazers, while they'll still be motivated to not get out of the tax, they're already under it. They can say no. They can walk away. You can just walk away from bad deals. This gives them the opportunity to walk away, and I think that's fine. The less generous read, and this is how I feel, is that it's cheap. It's cheap. I don't think it's wrong. Like I don't think it's like egregious to cut Didi Louzada. I've been pretty clear that I don't think he's an NBA player on previous podcasts, and I've already said it on this one too. Like I don't think it's egregious, but what it suggests is the part that's worse. I'm not a big salary cap guy. Like I understand the basic machinations of it, but I don't pretend to be someone who's like has a legal degree or is a CPA or whatever. Like that's, I can figure it out, and I know who to call. I have friends who can help me figure it out. But like, I didn't think they were going to waive Didi Louzada because of the guaranteed money in the future on his contract. In fact, if you've listened closely to podcasts throughout the summer, I talked about that with Sean Highkin specifically, and I said, are they really going to do that? Because there's still going to be would they pay Didi Louzada to go away? Well, this is. Luckily, the people running the Blazers are smarter than me. This is a creative way to get under the tax and pay Didi Louzada to go away. This like accomplishes multiple goals, right? It opens that roster spot for future flexibility to take on someone. But what this suggests to me is they're not going to take on someone. It suggests to me that they know that this team is just okay. And quite frankly, Joe Cronin has said as much. We're not good enough. We have to get better. But the timeline for have to get better might be sometime further in the future based on this move, because it's hard to be good and not be a tax team. And it's hard to be what the Blazers are and not maximize your roster spots. Like they need talent, right? They don't going with 14 just reduces the amount of talent you have. So you say when you initially waive Didi, like, oh, maybe my gut instinct. I see the news, I see the tweet from Adrian Wojnarowski, and I say, I didn't give Woj credit for that. Woj, reported by Woj that they waived Didi, and the math reported by ESPN's Bobby Marks, and as I said earlier, the stretch provision reported by Michael Scott of Hoops Hype. Give credit where it's due. My initial thought is like, oh, they're probably going to sign someone, right? And they'll just sign another big. And then it's like, oh, well, they're getting another luxury tax. I don't think they're going to sign someone. And I don't think they're going to sign someone in training camp. I don't think they're going to add someone in the future. I think this is what they're going to do, is they're going to be a team that stays below the tax. And if you stay below the tax, you're just not going to be that competitive. It's not like always that way, to be certain. I don't mean to like draw just like a really stark line there, but the teams who are really good spend money, and the Blazers probably know that they're not going to be really good, so they're hedging where they spend some money. Opening a 14th roster spot allows them to take on players in the future. They could do a 2-for-1 trade and fill out the 15th roster spot if it met their financial goals, right? But like, my read on this is that this is them saying, cool, our number one thing we want to do is not be a luxury tax-paying team. We've accomplished that goal. Can we accomplish our other goals within the parameters? I get it from a financial standpoint, and I get it from a leverage standpoint, like as I laid out early here. But like, I don't think it doesn't necessarily read as a negative. It's hard to read it as a positive moving forward. If they add someone, it'll be a positive, but they're, right up against that tax line. They probably won't do that. So this is probably it. This is probably the group they have. It's 14 and one two-way spot filled by Brandon Williams, and then one open two-way spot. That's what training camp will be about. It won't be about earning the 15th roster spot, filling out the 15th roster spot, adding another NBA vet, adding all of those things. It'll be about adding their final two-way spot. Let's talk about who could earn those final two-way spots in the third segment. Join me, won't you? Still a pass first point guard. I'm still Mike Richmond, and you are still listening to Locked on Blazers. So, Blazers roster set. They're not going to be a tax team. They've kind of shown us, believe it when they show you. They've shown us that they don't want to be. Well, I don't think it's egregious. It's set them up in a position to kind of have the roster set. So the last thing that isn't set is the last two-way spot. The first two-way spot is Brandon Williams, signed last year to a 10-day contract and then came back and they signed him to a two-way deal. Looks like a functional emergency third point guard. So now with this third two-way spot, there's three guys that have reportedly brought into training camp. Isaiah Miller, a 6-foot point guard out of UNCG, as reported by Chris Haynes. Jared Rhoden, a 6'6 wing out of Seton Hall, as reported by Shams Charania of The Athletic. And Norvelle Pelle, a 6'10 center with some NBA experience, as reported by Adrian Wojnarowski. I'm giving credit where it's due. So I'm citing my sources here. These three gentlemen signed to, non-guaranteed deals, which the Blazers will almost certainly take one of these three to be the last two-way spot. Isaiah Miller seems like the longest of long shots. Does this team need another 6-foot point guard? My goodness, no, they do not. Training camp body, another, guy who can help. Just also, if you like a guy, getting him in your gym and seeing him and let him play for you and go into training camp and go through all that stuff, that's helpful. He'll know the coaching staff. He'll know the system. He'll know the build. It's all those things. If down the line you need an emergency point guard, you have a relationship with Isaiah Miller. Cool. Good stuff. But he seems like a super long shot to make the roster. Jared Rhoden, I'm not going to pretend like I've scouted these dudes and watched them play. I've read their basic box score numbers. That's as close as I get. But from what I understand, reading about Jared Rhoden, tore it up in the G League, in Summer League. Played in the California Classic with the 4 California teams, and then played in Vegas and was straight up good, straight up very good. He has no NBA experience. 4 years at Seton Hall, and he's coming out of the draft or coming out of college. I think there is a world in which the Blazers add another 6'6 wing, because it's you need more wings. You need a bigger wing. If Rhoden was 6'8", probably wouldn't have gone undrafted. He'd be a different player. He wouldn't be like a 2-guard 2/3, but mostly a 2. He would be a big wing that people would covet, and he'd probably already be in the NBA. So I can see a world where he makes the roster, although I think it's really unlikely. I think this is Norvelle Pelle's job to lose. And Pelle is someone who I'm familiar with. Now, doing research for the show, I learned that he didn't just play for the 76ers. I only have seen Norvelle Pelle. I guess I knew he played for the Nets, but never saw him play a game. I knew he signed with the Nets, but never saw him play a game. I remember him in a Sixers uniform. Big hair and a beard. I remember him. He's like a 6'10 center. He's 29 years old, but he's still two-way eligible by virtue of not having less than 4 years of experience in the league. He's played 40 games in the NBA for the Sixers. I knew it. The Nets, I knew that happened. The Kings, no idea. The Knicks, no idea. And the Utah Jazz, how about it? He's played for 5 NBA teams, 40 games. The counting stats aren't worth knowing. Like, he's an emergency center, emergency backup big, and that's exactly who they should sign with the last two-way spot, right? Like right now, the only guys above 6'9" on the roster are Yusuf Nurkic and Drew Eubanks. Blanking on Drew Eubanks' name here, even though it's written in my notes. Nurk and Drew Eubanks, like they need another center just for responsibility reasons. Two-way spots don't count against their salary cap. You know, guys still get paid, but it doesn't count against salary cap. No tax implications. So this makes sense for them to do. Pelle seems like the guy. Conceivably, it could be Roden, but Pelle seems like the guy. He has some NBA experience doing exactly what would be asked to do here: emergency backup center minutes. I think he's from my vantage point here with no like reporting. I haven't like asked around or whatever, sent emails and texts, but I would assume he is. Certainly has the inside track just for logic reasons to make the team. Pelle's seems like he'll be the guy. So that seems like the roster will be set. The 14 players, 14 NBA guys, and then two-way spots to Brandon Williams and probably Norvelle Pelle. That's a team that can be competitive, fun, and interesting. This is not a championship quality roster, but it is a team that is lucky for the Allen Estate out of the luxury tax and has a bunch of intriguing young parts that could get better. Watchable as hell, certainly. It probably has a really realistic ceiling as a mid-tier playoff seed, but a fun mid-tier playoff seed to be sure. And if you are missing watching this mid-tier playoff seed, what if I told you that Yusuf Nurkic is going to play a whole bunch of basketball this weekend? If you're missing basketball in general, watch the WNBA playoffs. They've been really fun. But if you are missing watching a Trailblazer play basketball, Yusuf Nurkic is going to play basketball this weekend. As this show comes out, that you are listening to Thursday, September 1st show. I cannot believe it's September. Wow. But if you, by the time you're listening to this, most likely Yusuf Nurkic has already played a basketball game on Thursday morning. I'm recording this late on Wednesday evening. On Thursday morning, Bosnia plays the first of its Group B games against Hungary at 5:30 a.m. They play again Saturday against Germany, Sunday against Slovenia, Tuesday against France, and Wednesday against Lithuania to round out those games. 4 of those games, Thursday, Saturday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, are all at 5:30 a.m. Pacific time. If you live in another part of the world, it might be watchable. If you live on the East Coast, it's very watchable, 8:30 in the morning. Great. You could watch Nurk play basketball. All of these games streaming on ESPN, but the Sunday's game is 8:45 Pacific time. It's like middle of the day for your East Coasters, and if you live internationally, I can't. The date line confuses me. If you're an Australian listener, I don't know when this game is. I don't even know what day it is, but it's you can find it, I promise you. All of these games, at least in North America, are being streamed, at least in the United States. I should be clear. I have no idea what the deal is in Canada. At least in the United States, streaming on ESPN+. So I'm not going to watch the game against Hungary. I'll probably watch the highlights when they're available. Probably not getting up at 5:30 to watch the game against Germany, but I'm just straight up going to watch 8:45 a.m. Sunday morning. I'm going to watch them play Slovenia. That's Luka Doncic. That's Goran Dragic. That's Slovenia, Bosnia will be on my TV. Check my living room. We will be there watching it. It'll be fun. If you're fiending to watch the Blazers, a Blazer play basketball during this time of year, it's going to be a lot of fun. Also, I don't know if this is out there, so if it has been reported, I'm not giving someone else credit. Apologies, but Nurk told a Bosnian newspaper, or a Bosnian media outlet rather, it's a website where I read it earlier this month in August, that Chauncey Billups and a couple other Blazers were going to come to EuroBasket, and their group is playing in Germany, coming to Cologne, Germany to watch him play. So. That's fun. Chauncey will be there. I don't know who else, but I know Chauncey was in Egypt with basketball without borders, so he'll get to continue his world tour and head over to Germany and check out Nurk. I think that's a cool gesture to go check out Nurk playing for his country. The other, the compelling thing to watch is Group B is by far the most talented group in EuroBasket. It's 24 teams dividing up into 4 6-team groups, and France could win this thing. Slovenia has won this thing. Lithuania has Domantas Sabonis. They could win this thing. I mean, conceivably, at least they could get out of the group, no problem, or compete to get out of the group. It is Bosnia is not like a powerhouse by any means, but they beat France in a warm-up game or in a qualifier, unrelated qualifier leading up to this. They're competitive, or certainly conceivably could be competitive, but this is by far the most competitive group. They got a terrible draw, so bummer for Nurk's hopes of pushing forward, unless he springs an upset. How fun would that be? But the real pitch to watch these games is one, you get to watch basketball at 5:30 in the morning if you live in Portland, or you just get Nurk to see Nurk as the focal point of an offense, see Nurk as the man on a team. And I think Nurk in sort of that lead role, number one option role is intriguing, because you kind of see what expanded game Nurk would be. Also, I've watched a handful of portions of these games. I'm not getting up at 5:30 a.m., but when they've been on, or when I've watched the last little bit of France and Bosnia, the European game just flows better than the NBA. There's so many less stoppages. So it's a better television product. So I recommend, if you do have ESPN Plus, if you do have that subscription streaming service, you can check it out. If you are if you subscribe to the Disney family of products, chances are that with Hulu and Disney Plus, chances are you also have ESPN Plus. So check it out if you want to watch Nurk. First game Thursday at 5 a.m., Saturday at 5 a.m., and then Sunday at 8:45. All of those are at Portland time. That's today's show. Didi Louzada, thanks for the memories. I'll always remember the 7 games you played for the Trailblazers, including one start. I won't. I'll be honest, I won't. I don't think I'll remember them. But we're going to have another show tomorrow. Come back for that one. Tell your friends about this show. I'd really appreciate it. I never do this, but I'll do it now. Subscribe to the show on YouTube. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. I'm not good at this. You can tell I don't do it very often. Subscribe to the YouTube channel if you are a podcast listener. If you're a YouTube watcher, go subscribe to the podcast on your favorite podcast service. It's available wherever you get podcasts. I appreciate you listening. Come back for tomorrow's show. I'll talk to you soon.